Friends in Recovery, the Addiction Recovery Podcast, is brought to you by the Friends in Recovery community, a thriving network of individuals who are fighting back against the stigma of addiction. Join our hosts as they speak up about the real issues of addiction, treatment, and recovery. Friends in Recovery, the Addiction Recovery Podcast, is available on Facebook, Podbean, iTunes, and YouTube 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Now, here are your friends in recovery.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Friends in Recovery Podcast. I'm your host, Jersey Ed. And I don't have a co-host today except for this lovely lady, Kim Ciccone.
Thank you.
I will introduce you who she is in a minute. We're going to do a little talking back and forth. I still haven't come up with a co-host, but I did ask Kim before if she wanted to do a guest co-host somewhere down the road. So you might see Kim on here again. More to be revealed. We'll see how this goes if she can tolerate me for the next 45 minutes or so. Anyways, but guys, I forgot last week to give out the 800 number. Kim, we've been off for a couple months, just kind of taking a reset. It's the summer. Nobody wants to hear my voice throughout the summer anyways, when they could be on the beach and, all that stuff. But so we took a couple months off, and Carl and I did 2 shows, and we forgot to give the phone number, the email address, like, subscribe, share, all that good stuff, the website. So the last 2 shows were just, no nonsense with Carl and I. And if you guys want to listen to some 2 good shows, go back the last 2 and see what Carl and I came up with. So, and just giving everybody an update, his agent refused the contract. And I added 4 more zeros to the 0 that was already there, and they still didn't accept the offer. So it was for free. If you watch the last couple podcasts, that's what we were talking about. Anyways, guys, if you want to get a hold of us, it's 800-989-6504. That's to get a hold of me directly. That'll ring my cell phone. It's a non-emergency number. So if it is an emergency, do not call that number. And that's 800-989-6504. You can email us at friends in recovery community at gmail.com. And Carl will put my email address up there. And we also want you to like, subscribe, and share. Hit that notification button, so every time this show comes up, you will be notified. And also go to our website, friendsinrecoverycommunity.org. We also can use some donations. Kim knows that world too, that we can be talking about too. But if you want to make a donation, please go to our website and make that donation, or call me and I'll be more than happy to tell you how to do it. So anyways, God, I hate doing that business part of things. So, Kim Ciccone, welcome to the show. That's what this is about, right?
Thanks for having me. Yes.
You're welcome. You're welcome. But if we didn't do that business stuff, like, asking for money, this wouldn't run, and the 800 number.
You have to put the handles in. Yeah, always. I think that it's really important. Yeah. It makes it more accessible to people too, that you have these virtual options for people to listen in and talk. And I, even when I'm listening to podcasts, I was listening to your last episode, I could have texted you throughout the entire episode as if you're talking current, so.
Well, what did you think of our episodes? This is, I know you just found us.
Relatable for me on recovery, on working in the nonprofit, and on working, even I had a podcast briefly. It was more like an interview setting. I would interview different peers in recovery, and I understand the stress of getting it moving, keeping it on a consistent basis, getting people in the door to do this. So I completely understand and related. I was cracking up actually a little bit on that ride home from Yeah.
Oh yeah, from the visit. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, it's funny. I don't know if it was this podcast, the current podcast that just came out Sunday or before. I was talking, Carl was all talking about, when you're in recovery, he goes, when you say you're going to be on a podcast, you show up on the podcast, right? And you're not, he was talking about not, being an idiot and not show up anymore. You know what I mean? When we're drinking and
Right.
using and all that. So I
Right.
called you on Sunday when we were originally supposed to do this and say, "Hey, Kim, do you mind? My wife is staying home and, she's, we're going to go out and blah, blah, blah." And then I listened to the podcast. I'm like, oh shit, I'm that fucking derelict.
No, but you know what? I think
I know.
It's so funny though. There's such like a funny thing because there's such a work-life balance, and I
Yeah.
think it's, we're growing older. I'm watching my parents get older and seeing them, it's like you want to enjoy all those moments. So I totally get it when people are like, hey, like I have time to spend with my family. I'm like, spend it, please, time well
I
spent.
know.
Yeah.
I know. Well, thank you. And this got delayed a little bit, and it's a couple of days later. But I'm glad you're on. I had the pleasure of spending part of the day with you over in my other life, in my work life, and
it was beautiful.
yeah, and I appreciate it. And an old friend stopped by too, so you got to kind of hear that interaction of us not seeing each other for 20 years. So I apologize for that, but
no, you know what I loved? She said the story about you guys doing karaoke, and that is so important in recovery, like having those moments of fun. So I loved hearing that because I'm like, well, that's why he's sober. That's why they're doing the thing. So it's good.
Yeah, that was the best night. Like, and I'm going to try to get Mary on the show, but that was really my best night out with friends in recovery. Like, just early, that wasn't even early recovery, but it was, it was a great night. And we, I didn't do karaoke, but we just had a great night together with a bunch of friends that some weren't in recovery. And it's cool how we can mix our friends today. Right. I don't know, if you're, and you can tell us how many years or whatever, but, getting into it, I came into recovery to live a life, not to live in AA or NA or constantly read the big book or constantly read Carl's book. I read this, and I think you got this book too, but constantly, doing something AA. I'm, kind of through that part now where I do need my balance of everything. And is that something that you're kind of doing now and all that? So
it's very interesting. I came through the company I now work for. I came through their nonprofit. Well, I came through Relevance Behavioral Health and then their nonprofit side. A lot of my recovery came in the aftercare in the Healing Us communities, but it's the same modalities in the treatment side. It's just longer term.
Okay.
So when or not treatment, but like same modalities of healing. So when I entered to that side, what I really enjoyed is the independence that it builds for your life. So it's more about filling your life with things. And like, for instance, smart recovery is a big one of our meetings that we follow. So they believe in like the stages of change. And for instance, they do believe that you could exit the recovery stage. And that's something that becomes very dicey when we get 12-step people in our room. They don't like to hear the thought of exit because that could be harmful to some people. And I think that with anybody, it's one size doesn't fit all in recovery. I think some people, they do need the 12-step meetings. That's what fulfills them. It's harm reduction, right? So we choose the best course of action. But what I liked about smart recovery is that there is an exit. So at this point in my life, I don't necessarily fight the urge of cravings for substances anymore. I more so find myself like, hey, what's this new phase that I'm in, that stage of healing, that I need to work through? What do I need to fill my life with fulfillment? What do I like to do for fun? So I'm kind of with you on that 100%. And I feel like that is my recovery.
Yeah. So now, are you an AA person or a smart recovery person or?
So my funny joke with AA and NA is that when I go to their meetings, I tell them I'm the bad friend of NA. I come here when things are really bad. I dump all my stuff and then you won't know what happened because I'll probably come back in 3 months to give you the follow-up. And it's I just know if I need a meeting, I hit a meeting. But I definitely would say I'm more so a smart and refuge recovery type of person. I have done some step work. I've had a sponsor in the past. But for the most part, I follow like the smart recovery, in the sense that I do like ongoing DBT and like those types of tools.
Mm-hmm. So smart recovery, do they now? I'm an AA guy, and kind of most of our shows are built around AA or NA, and I was
I
talking to
totally
Carl.
know and understand the program.
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah. And but you know what? I was talking to Carl too. It was either last show or the show before about wanting to be more open to different different pathways to recovery, because we always say we're different pathways of recovery, but then when we get down to it, I'm always talking about AA, and this is great because I really do want people to hear more about like smart recovery,
like
or
the other
Dharma,
options.
or absolutely. And even Carl's book, like his I keep showing it this book here. Buy his book, by the way.
It's so good. I like the affirmations. I like that it's very like, it's like you're talking to a human through the book,
It's real, right? It's real. And it's like, it's a really good, it's called 366 effing days sober. I think you get it on Amazon, just Google it or Google it, just go to Amazon and put in 366 fucking days sober. It might come up too. I don't know. But if you put effing days sober, I know will come up. But, and it's a 366 days of like a daily reflections. That's what it is. And it's not AA, it's not NA, it's not smart recovery. It's just what Carl came up with. And we've been talking about it for the last year on here. And, I want to get those different perspectives because, everybody knows AA and it's great. Kept me sober for the last 30 years. And I'm not going to veer off to, get on any other programs, but I want to add on to other, to like you said, to grow, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I think I should note in early recovery, I did both programs. It wasn't, I did, let's say a year into my sobriety, up to like 18 months, I was AA, but earlier I was NA for the most part. Just because I think my substance of choice led me to NA, and then later I liked the God aspect of AA. But multiple pathway was my initial form of recovery through relevance and then through the nonprofit, because they just had multiple pathways so that you had all these other intros, because there is 12-step walking distance from our facility as well. So people know where that is and they go to that. What I like with SMART, it's a 4-point method, and it's just change your thoughts, change your behaviors, change your life. If you could change the way that you perceive your thoughts and your emotions, everything around you will change. So it's a science-based methodology. They do tell you in like the SMART Facilitator course that it's best in combination with other programs. So doing it with 12-step or having the basis of 12-step or anything. And then refuge is more so the Buddhist inspired pathway. So it's freedom from suffering of all kinds, not specific to substance or mental health. It's just any suffering, which is so cool. And they kind of have four laws or something like that. It's 4 very deep broken down questions, which basically are very similar to 12-step when you get to the core of them. They're all similar, just different fonts.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Carl and I had this conversation on the last podcast that if you really look at the steps in any of these programs and what the core of these programs are, it brings it back to the Bible, right? Seriously, most of this stuff you can find in the Bible, God and just doing nice things for others, right? And hanging around people that are like-minded and it just goes on and on. Like I study the Bible now. Every day I read a chapter out of the Bible, and I was sharing this on the last show, but it's just amazing how it's so relevant for today, like to this moment. You can use some of the stuff I don't understand, some of the stuff I do, but just like, hey, some of the stuff I don't understand, some I do.
The Bible app takes you just put easy read. It's so funny the way it'll re-break down. Sometimes I think they change it too much. They do morph the message a little bit, but I'm okay, at least I know what they're saying.
Yeah. I'll read it. And then I go into this, to be like Christ. It's called, it's a 5-minute Bible study. I just found it on the YouTube cool. and that's, I just, and he breaks it down in 5 minutes and it's great. But, it's like, that's what our programs, any of these programs are about, right? I mean, get out of yourself, believe in somebody else, and do good, right? And that's what life is
Yeah,
really about. And if you don't do that, you're a pretty shitty person, right? If you think too much about
exactly.
yourself,
Yeah.
if you're not believing
Yeah.
in
You don't want to be
something,
self-centered.
I'm not saying believe in God, but believe in something, a higher power, something greater than ourselves, and then just
Hmm.
do good. I mean, so what brought you here? I'm sorry, I can ramble on and on and on, but what brought you here?
Um,
What's your story?
so my story is very, it's intricate because there's a lot of dynamics to it. So I was a child, when I'm adopted, I was adopted from pretty much birth. I was in the hospital for a couple months, but I had the paper signed before I even, went over with my now family, raised all Italian. By genetics, I'm technically British Irish and,
Wow.
like most
Okay.
British Irish and Northern European all over.
Okay.
Um, And I actually met my biological mom, very
Mm.
cool, about 7 years ago. I found out that my biological siblings, I have two, now know I exist. I have one adopted sister. So that's the dynamic of the adoption part. That's
Mm-hmm,
pretty much the
mm-hmm.
base of it. I'm kind of connecting to my biological family now. It's
Cool.
always a journey, and there's boundaries with it too. So, um, but I also was born with a facial disorder. So I had cleft lip and palate on one side. And I honestly realized on multiple podcasts, I don't know the number of surgeries I had. And I think I quoted some
Okay.
number. My mom goes, I don't think it was. And I'm like, you know what? So I'm going to stop saying the number. But I had so many surgeries from 16 weeks old all the way through 18 years old.
Wow.
And that was the cap of I think I may have had one other reconstructive later.
Mm-hmm.
But I was a child of, I found out recently it's called PMTS, pediatric medical trauma, traumatic stress. So it's a
Mm-hmm.
PTSD. And I think that my whole family kind of suffered from that because being like a kid in the hospital, it's just the whole medical trauma is like a whole different,
Mm-hmm.
ball game. But, so as I got into my adulthood, I was prescribed multiple. I think the reason why that's very important for me, and I'm always confused by this part, they say when you're an addict, the first time you touch your first drug, that wasn't
Mm-hmm.
the case for me because I
Okay.
had multiple surgeries, multiple painkillers, and I actually wouldn't take them after I left the hospital, never abused. When I wound up becoming an addict, I had multiple pill bottles from previous surgeries that were filled that helped my, addiction. But I was more so a trauma incident. I wound up dating a really bad guy. It's a story of, I think, a lot of women that wind up in the substance use world. I met a really bad guy. He wound up he's not like the trendy version of a narcissist that people are talking about all over social media. Like
Mm-hmm.
someone's just an a-hole and you're like, he's a
Mm-hmm.
narcissist. He was actually a narcissist. And when you really encounter one, it's like the scariest thing. And you just think it can't be real or someone doesn't want to be like that. So I feel like my fight was always like trying to like love him,
Mm-hmm.
like to love me, and eventually I wound up getting into drugs through him. Actually, what really triggered it for me, we were dating for about 3 months, and that 3 month rule is so real because that wall came down at the
Mm-hmm.
marker, but he wound up getting me pregnant. I don't know
Mm-hmm.
why I whispered that, pregnant at that time. And he
Mom and dad
had,
might be listening.
you never know,
That
but
was funny. At least you can
and
laugh at it now, right?
I know.
Yeah.
It's so funny.
God bless
It's
you.
like, I think too dark humor when you go through enough trauma. If you ever see me smile
Mm-hmm.
at an awkward time, I realize that's just like some weird coping for me. Um, but I wound up having, I wound up getting pregnant. He started cheating on me. He hit me for the first time that
Mm-hmm.
weekend. He smacked my face into my steering wheel while I was driving.
Oh.
Um, and then he tells his mom that we're pregnant. She basically says, which was still the oddest thing to me, that her and her wife or whatever wanted a baby and they offered to take mine before I even knew what the heck was going on. Like I was
Mm.
very early on at that time. And then on the way home, he's like, I don't know why we told her like we're gonna get the abortion, basically. And it's such a tricky thing because this is something that I never agreed with. As a kid that's adopted, it was one of those like moral dilemmas that people talk about. You like all of a sudden you make this decision and you cannot even like look at yourself straight. That's pretty much what happened. He kicked me in the stomach right before I officially decided that I wasn't going to go through with the pregnancy. And then when I got there, they prescribed me opiates. And at this point, he was already experimenting with opiates. So it's kind of like it went off to the races. By the time the following month, my time a month came, I just started using opiates and I didn't stop. And it progressed pretty much from, let's say, March to December was the length of my run. And at that point, my body was no longer functioning the way it should have been. I was about 30 to 40 pounds underweight. My electrolytes were completely depleted. My hands was like cramped up like this and my eyes were twisted, but I thought that it was just a health issue. I didn't think it had to do with the substances.
Yeah,
None of the above.
We never do, right? I know.
Yeah. So my parents, I go to my dad's birthday dinner. It's December 11th. And my mom sees me and I'll never forget this. I walked into this restaurant called King's in Freehold. And I don't know why I quoted the whole restaurant, but it's great. So I walk in there and I remember my mom looked at me and she just like, it's like she saw someone that was dead walk in and she just was like, no, like this is not real. And right after that, by that following Sunday, I think it was a Friday or it was maybe the day before that following Sunday, because I was living with my boyfriend at the time, an interventionist showed up to our house from Healing Us Communities and had offered us both help, even though he was an abuser and everything. They offered us both help. I remember my ex looked at him in his face and goes, I'm good. Like it just, and I remember the guy told me he wanted to Narcan him so bad. He would never, but he was like, I just wanted him to know you're not good, you know? And I was so twisted that I was like, sure. I couldn't even look at my parents for another minute and like put them through that. And I think it's important to state too, for me, the external force was the only reason I got sober. You know, because for me, I was done. My life was worth nothing. For me, it was a slow suicide. And I was on a mission to die and it just wasn't happening. And then one day my parents just kind of showed up. And I think I wound up going back to that guy after treatment because I didn't get voted. It's so funny. I didn't get voted into housing of the company I now work for, which is like hilarious. But I didn't get voted in. They overrode the vote and I wound up going in after a relapse. And from there, it's just been just learning, finally accepting. I think the final time that I got sober was March 23rd, 2021. I tried to move to Asbury for a bit with a different boyfriend after this one. He struggled with substance use as well. So that's really just the story there. It's nothing major. There was some major trauma stuff that happened in his life. But for me, I just one day decided I need to turn my life over. I'm done. This is not fit for me. I already knew what sobriety felt like and it wasn't that bad. I had so many friends that were like at the house. And so, I went back with full acceptance. And I remember saying, if somebody threw a Dr. Seuss book at me and told me I had to read it 300 times in a row, I'm reading that book 300 times in a row because like nothing was dumb anymore. And what's really funny about my journey too, I was so angry when I first got here. I would snap off and that's just the neural passageways from like the domestic violence, like the fight or flight response was insane. So I would just snap off at anybody. I like could not control myself. And now I think I've probably gotten angry like 3 times, like majorly angry in the past like 3 years. And it was still controlled, like, and that's insane, to be able to like control my emotions and like think with level head
without lashing out. And, we don't hear, I shouldn't say we don't hear enough of the story, which we never heard these stories because they never existed, but your story is not common, but it's common not to hear your story, right? Because everybody's afraid, what's going to happen. How did you just,
scared. Yeah.
Yeah, and if you don't
Yeah.
want to talk about it, it's okay. But
No, I
you
do.
know,
I do. I need to.
yeah,
It's important. I
because it's
do.
going
So
to
that's
help.
what
It's
I
going to help other women out there, and there are some men that are in relationships that they get abused too, but it's mainly
do.
the
Yeah.
women. Yeah, and
Mhm.
but what was people do say my husband's narcissistic, my boy, whatever, but
Mhm.
you really had that. You
Full
lived that.
experience. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that both his parents were doctors. One, I think, may have gotten investigated towards the end and might have lost his license. He was an
Mm,
anesthesiologist. The other one, she's general practitioner. And I think that they knew something was wrong with him because they were giving him prescriptions for things for a really long time.
mhm.
And I think, like, even just if you think back to me saying I'm pregnant, to her first comment being, you could come visit the baby, and then like it's off of you. But I think she just
Yeah.
knew. I knew even with animals, they would take the animals away from him. He's very abusive to animals.
Mm,
Um, and I'll never forget this I've never said before. The last conversation I had with him, before I knew in my head finally, like, this is like real and you need to stop being dumb. Like, I always say this, like, you could be stupid, but don't be dumb. Like,
mm,
that's literally what happened in
yeah.
that moment. Like,
Yeah.
I was like, this is beyond. He had mentioned something about when he was under the age of 5, shaking a baby cousin when everybody was asleep and like
Mm,
drowning a cat till it almost drowns and then letting it go. And
mm,
obviously that's a trigger warning for people, so we probably should put that.
mm,
But um,
yeah.
hearing that, like, and like he's crying about it, and like I knew there was some remorse, but it was more so like he felt bad for himself that he was like effed up like that. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? Like, it's
Yeah.
just so different. Sometimes people that have narcissism, they portray like traits that come off like emotional interactions, like they feel what you're saying, but it's really just them mirroring like what you're doing. So they're only
Mhm.
really mirroring off of your actions, and anything that's going to point any blame at them, they're always going to spin back and confuse you
Yeah.
with.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So how did you get out of that? Because I mean, substance abuse, and I mean, you were deep in the
it was
hole.
hard.
Like, okay, yeah. I mean, and there's women
Yeah.
out there now that are like, how do I get out? Right? Silently, they're not even telling anybody. They might be listening to this show. It's important to understand where you've
Yeah.
been, but the more important part is, how did you crawl out of that? How did you dig your way up? Was it by a
I
miracle? Was it by a lot of hard work? Did it take a day? Did it take 10 years? I don't know, like how did you do that?
Yeah. So honestly, if I'm being like the most candid I can, I think that a lot of people are scared to tell people they're getting abused. But even if you tell one person, you need to talk out loud, because it's so easy when you sit in silence with your abuser. First of all, the things that happen in your brain when you're going through any type of abuse, it could be emotional, it could be
Hmm.
verbal, it could be physical. Your hippocampus, I believe, and now if I'm wrong, shrinks, and uh, something with an M. It swells up, and what
Okay.
happens? Medulla, or I freaking forget. I
Yeah,
always
yeah,
know it,
okay.
but
I'm not a
um,
yeah, I'm not
yeah.
gonna
So what
correct you.
happens
So
is your short-term memory completely swipes. So
oh.
it's very easy to manipulate you, because they'll say things like, "You don't remember what you did to like that made me flip out," and then you just can't remember what started the argument, so you'll literally be like, oh my god, did I do something
Mm,
that started this whole argument? Did I? Like, I guess I did. It's just like very easy to convince yourself of things. And that's how they keep you longer. So I think when you speak out loud to people and you just tell one person, a trusted person, even if you're not ready to leave yet, like, continue to tell them, know that that person might get sick of hearing you without the solution, and I just
mhm,
pray that the person that is listening doesn't get sick of them and they just
mhm,
allow that open door. Um,
mhm,
but to keep reaching out, and to just be really honest with yourself. And when I finally left, honestly, it was from me telling enough people. I, at this point, already was lying and saying that the abuse stopped, which I
mhm,
will say, when we started using substances together, we were running partners. We were like partners in crime. I think he almost trained me. It's horrible because I think about this all the time. He trained me like someone would train their pit bull. Like I
Mm.
was like a war item for him, like in drug use. Like if he had an altercation with a woman, it was my job to resolve it. Like it's like horrible to say, but that was the dynamic of our relationship. And I just started slowly packing my stuff. We had this closet built in our apartment. And I had slowly started packing bags and hiding them behind the closet because you couldn't tell because there's so much clothes.
Hmm.
And then I remember actually God's will, right? So I'm in the apartment. This is like after a relapse. I flipped my car 2 weeks previous. It
Oh
was
my
like
God.
mine and his car. And then I just kept running somehow. I was able to still get drugs from my house. And
Oh my God.
I what happened? I'm so sorry. Oh, so a friend
Okay.
came and picked us
Take your
up
time.
to go to Newark. We come back from Newark and I go down to his car. I think he forgot something in there. And I decide when I'm out there because I'm out of my mind to clean his car because that's what we do. We just like do these very unproductive, productive things. So I'm cleaning this
Hmm.
guy's car. I go back up to the apartment and I notice that he's not conscient. Like he's not there. So I start screaming and I'm like, this guy's like overdosed. And my ex and his friend were not paying attention, and like I remember that belt went off one because like if it was me or my ex there, we both would have been
Hmm.
dead. And so then I like made them carry this guy to the hospital. When they brought him to the hospital, I called and my friend who was supposed to come pick me up because this was a slow planned thing for about a week.
Hmm.
And I started putting my stuff into the front of the door, but there was a lot of stuff to move out.
Hmm.
And by the time I like had all my stuff and my friend's probably 30 minutes out. He comes in, he takes my phone, throws it across the apartment. All of a sudden, I guess my friend contacted my mom, who contacted the Perth Amboy police. And
Hmm.
I had all of the police there. I was only allowed to take one bag with me when I left.
Hmm.
And I wound up staying at my parents', detoxing at home. I didn't have
Hmm.
health insurance, so I detoxed at home. I just went back to the meetings and things at CFC loud and clear.
Hmm.
And then eventually, um, I wound up going into their IPRP program, which was just an alternative for people like me who didn't have
Hmm.
insurance. It was,
Hmm.
I think it was like 3,000 out of pocket. It's just like peer led sobriety
Hmm.
for 30 days
Hmm.
just on an intense level. And like I said, at that point, I was going to read Dr. Seuss 300 times.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Whatever,
you
wherever
know,
it took. So the
yeah,
persistency of you just saying, "Hey, listen, I'm going to jump out of this plane, and if the parachute opens, if it doesn't, then we'll just do the other parachute or whatever it takes just to get the fuck
yeah,
out because hitting the ground is much better than where I'm at right now."
yeah.
And
No, I was
you
done.
know,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
and you just had to take that chance, and that
yeah,
it reminds me of what you were saying about smart recovery, right? I mean that had to help you a huge amount too in both
yeah.
sides of your worlds, in the substance abuse and the the abuse side of everything too
Yeah,
from
the
him.
PTSD is so real.
Yeah.
All of us, I have to say, people get substance induced PTSD as well from like those runs. I don't know a lot of people in recovery that don't have
Hmm.
PTSD.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
But and that smart recovery, and that's why we need all kinds of, like bring it way
yeah,
back to the beginning of the show, because not, AA might not, the perfect example. AA might not be, you could not share what you just shared in an AA meeting. You
no,
could, but it would be, you would be looked upon, and then that would make you even feel worse, right? And
yeah,
that's just, and nothing against AA. AA has its place, NA has its place, everything has its place. But what do
yes,
you do with a story like yours or somebody else? Like, I work with a lot of cops and firefighters, and they see a lot of stuff, PTSD, in a different way than what you had. Still,
hmm,
it's all still there. But if you
yeah,
can't talk, like you said, keep talking to somebody about it, even if you can't get out, right?
you
And
have
what if
to.
that
Yeah,
person is in AA? You want to talk to them or whatever, and you're,
hmm.
and I commend you for getting out. I mean, it's probably the hardest thing you've ever done in your life. I'd have to imagine.
It was literally a promise with myself. Like, eh, I don't know, this might be controversial, but I don't know if you ever thought of a doomsday plan when you first get sober. You're like, this is the, if I F up this time, this is my doomsday. And my doomsday was to take him down with me. Like that was literally my plan. If I was going to use drugs again, I'm going to find him and I'm going to take him right out with me. Like, and that's like, crazy to think of. But I remember saying like, I'm either all in or I'm out, and to be at that place it's just basically like really like suicidal ideation in a sense, like that's how bad things were. So
and I'm guessing you probably turned to drugs to make it a little bit easier. So it was that crazy back and forth. Like okay, well,
I have ADHD, so for me it was like opiates felt like a sensory deprivation, which is amazing for someone like me who feels so much all the time to just like have nothing. And it was funny when I relapsed on this last run that I went on before I like officially got clean. I relapsed on uppers instead, and I hated opiates. So, and I don't know why I relapsed last time. I think I thought it was situational, and then I just realized, Kim, give up the fight. Like you don't need the glass of wine. You don't need anything. Just chill. Life's okay.
Yeah, life is okay. My boss always says, he's a good friend of mine too. He says, you know what, Ed, in the end, everything's going to be okay, right? It's going to work its way out. And, for us as addicts and alcoholics and wanting to be in control as best as we could, if we just take our stinking fingers out of the mix, it will be okay, right? And just listen to somebody, right? You said, I think before we started the show, I don't know if you said it on the show, but, I could have had an extra couple years, but that's us meddling and that's us meddling in our recovery. And I could have had a year or two probably beforehand and, meddling in our recovery, doing it our way first. Let me try my way first. Maybe this glass of wine will be good, or maybe this will be okay, or maybe go back to, I went back to my ex. She wasn't abusing me, but it was just a bad relationship that, that alcohol just sparked the fire and that was it. So,
I think that something that's so like, it just made me want to bring it up too. Relationships, the people you surround yourself with, like not even like forget abuse, right? Like just like you're around people that are like just lower vibration, you're just going to absorb everything that you're around. So like I'm so cautious and almost like a little PTSD with like who I give my energy to and who I spend time around, because I realize that now, like how important it is. So I think like for people listening too, like to really look at the people you're around and see if they're inspiring you. Are they making you the best version of yourself? And what's crazy is chemically, you'll see it. If you're around somebody that's unhealthy for you, your skin will swell, like things actually happen. Like you're like, I look ugly. Like,
gain weight, lose weight, eat bad, stop whatever you're doing. Yeah, absolutely. And there are throughout my life, there were people I had to cut out of my life, not because, and they're good people, but like you said, I'm always asking the question, what value are you going to add to my life and what value can I add to your life? Right. Because if there's no value back and forth, if I can't add value to your life and you can't add value to my life and we're going to hang out, it makes no sense. To me, it doesn't make any sense. Right. Because, I think, I don't know if it's up there still. It says,
is it there?
You're either getting, I don't know if you can read that. It's either getting better or getting worse. You're not staying the same. Right. So you're either getting better or getting worse. And I don't ever want to get worse. I've come too far to come too far. That's my saying. I've come too far, I haven't come this far to come this far, basically, right?
Exactly.
And, and I don't need somebody taking me down. I can do a good job myself taking myself down. Believe me, I don't need no fucking help.
I owe no one more of an apology than I owe myself.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. But, and it's good to hear, like, get on a podcast with like-minded people. And it was great to meet you in person. And let me tell you, Mary, and myself, I should get us on a show because it would go 17,000 different directions.
My gosh, I adored her. She was so funny. I was thinking about it on the way home. I'm like, I feel like I started answering. I do this all the time. I'm like, I feel like I started answering some questions and then it went a I don't think I finished answering the
Yeah,
question.
yeah. That was
So
her and my
yeah, I
conversation the
love
next
doing
hour
that.
after that. Yeah, yeah. It's okay. It's just it's what we do, right? And we know how
Yeah,
we know when when we're around like-minded people like that. First of all, our brains keep going, right?
yeah,
And we keep thinking and we keep wanting to learn. Like every questions that we asked or every questions that were asked us, we were learning in that little bit that we were all together, and that's
yeah.
how we have to live our lives. And if it's NA, if it's AA, if it's smart recovery, if it's like-minded people, if it's a podcast, whatever it is, we have to make sure that we're growing. We have to make sure that we're listen, if I always need to add value to my life every single day, whatever that is. And the minute I get up
Mhm.
in the morning and start meditating for an hour and a half, my breath work, whatever that is, and I can kind of
Yeah.
get through my problems and whatever your I don't whatever your kind of pathway is
Oh,
to
yeah. I'm
challenging
like
yourself and
paddleboard,
moving through.
gym, breathe,
hmm and
all the
that's what
things.
healthy people do, right? That's what healthy people
Mhm.
do, and that's recovery. That's recovery on top of AA,
Yeah.
NA, smart recovery,
Mhm.
and like we were saying at the beginning of the show, and we'll wind it down here, is that we have to have balance. We can't just be
Yeah.
all AA, can't just be all NA, can't be
Yeah.
all just no
Mhm.
recovery. We can't be all church. We can't be all God.
You can't
We
be
have
all
to
gym.
be.
You break your ankle. If
There
gym
you
is your
go.
only source of, we said this. We've had people relapse over that too. Can't be all
Yeah.
gym. You can't.
Yeah. No, you can't be all gym. You have to have a great balance in life.
Mhm.
And, it's a constant struggle for me. I don't know about you, keeping that balance because I want to keep adding more things in and,
Yeah. I
work
want
and
to learn
this and
everything out
that.
there.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I want to learn everything in there. I got my whole all above me is books and books that I've read and
Yeah.
like nonstop reading and I sat this morning and we can close after this, but I sat this morning and I was thinking I really don't even have to read. I just need to be okay with just sitting here, right? And I took a couple
Yeah.
minutes and I sat. I mean, how often with the energy that you and
Yeah.
I have, how often do we just sit, not
Rare.
meditating, not
Rare.
breathing, rare,
And
right?
do you struggle? So as ADHD, my like self-worth goes based off my productivity in my mind. So when I have that moment of sitting, I
I'm not laughing
convince
at you. I'm
myself,
laughing with you.
yeah, I convince myself I'm like a nut. I'm like, oh, you lazy. You think you can just sit
Yeah.
there? And then my therapist is
Yeah.
like, you have to be okay with sitting, Kim.
Yeah, absolutely. Like,
Yeah.
and we always, and you probably identify with this, and a lot of people out there listening is when we come home at the end of the day or our day's finished, we don't think about the things that we accomplished because we accomplish a lot of things during the day, right? We think
Yeah.
about the 2 or 3 things that we didn't accomplish. Holy fuck, I didn't get that report out, or I didn't call
Yeah.
my boss back, or I'm such an idiot. But it doesn't mean that you put. Yeah, there you go. Right? I know I got
All the
books and
things I'm going to
notes.
forget.
I know, right? You got pads everywhere. It's but still, we look at like what didn't we accomplish. So we have to really be cognizant of the things we did finish, the things that we did do, that we didn't pick up today, right? That we stayed sober,
Yeah.
that we helped a loved one. Maybe you said a prayer for somebody. Oh, by the way, everybody, just keep your thoughts
There's
and
the
prayers
Carl.
for Carl. For just believe me, just keep your thoughts and prayers for him. And he definitely needs a little bit right now. But we love you, Carl, and we know everything's going to be just the way it's supposed to be. And you'll be on here talking about your book and all
Soon.
that. But just anyways, but yeah, and that's kind of how we have to look at things and just go on and keep learning. Don't ever stop learning. So
Yeah.
we're going to end it here, but I just want to, is there anything you want to close with? Anything that
Um,
stands out for you? Anything that, you kind of live by that you can pass on for the 4 people in
um,
the audience?
I think that definitely, I think that it's so important to really be cautious of the things that we're speaking into existence in our lives. You could speak anything into existence, so good or bad. So what's the harm in doing a little bit of affirmations every day? And I think that if I could just tell our listeners one thing that keeps me sober, keeps me sane, is just the repeating of affirmations. And two of my faves, I'll just give you those, are everything that I want wants me more, which is just something to attract, like, so you're not chasing things. And then the other one is no weapons against me shall prosper.
That's right.
And,
Amen on that one. Absolutely.
Just keep them.
Yeah. Yeah. Kim Ciccone, right? Is that right? Did I say it right?
Yeah.
Thank you so much. All Kim's information will be below. I will make sure email addresses and all that how she can be contacted. Or you can reach out to us on the show here, and we'll get you in touch with Kim if something struck you here and you want to kind of go a little bit deeper, maybe with Kim or whoever, and just figure out where life is going. So, Kim, I really appreciate your time. Who knows? Maybe you might show up on another podcast. I need some guests.
Anytime.
I need some some hosts. So we'll talk a little bit more about it. But thank you so much. And we end the show by saying, stay sober, everybody.
Stay sober. Thank you so much, Ed.
This episode of Friends in Recovery, the Addiction Recovery Podcast. Follow us on Facebook for past shows and updates, and enjoy free access to twice daily support meetings. Friends in Recovery, the Addiction Recovery Podcast, is available on Facebook, Podbean, iTunes, and YouTube 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.